Okay. Um, I'm going to talk through some tips about kind of attitude you should have in music. I think if you want to be successful. So I've only got 3 tips, but I think they're all very key. So I'll just run through them, and this should be very helpful. I think even if you're not into music, there's good analogy for life in a lot of these tips. So tip number 1: don't get too attached to what you create. Your music, your old music, I should say, will sound shit compared to what you'll be able to make in the future. So what I'm saying by this is, I think if you're starting off songwriting, what will often happen is you write a lot of songs that you know aren't particularly good, and then one day you'll write one song that's actually like pretty decent, and it like sounds a lot better than all the other songs that you've written. And because you're so excited about having written a good song, you'll get very attached to it, and you will you'll form a sort of emotional attachment that most people won't have with it, whereby you give it more. This sounds horrible to say. I've done it a lot myself, but where you give it more credit than it's due. And it's understandable because you had this emotional connection to it, because you're the one who's written it and everything else. But the problem comes in is that you don't realise that other people won't have the same connection to it. And the other thing you don't realise is, even though this is the best thing you've made at the moment, in the grand scheme of things, you can make stuff that's way better if you keep up the work. So I recommend people to, like, there's not to say don't celebrate your victories when you write a good song, but realise that it's really like a building process. And like, I remember I wrote songs when I was writing music. Like, I wrote songs that I thought were amazing, really amazing. But then in a year's time, like, I write a song that was just objectively twice as good, and then, and so on and so on. And that's the crazy thing about music is, you'll just get stuff that sounds way better, and then you'll be like, well, why was I gassing that up so much? I should be gassing this up. So yeah, that's tip number 1. The problem comes in with it is where a band writes a lead single. They're running off one lead single, and they think it's really good because they've gone through this process of getting really attached to it. But in truth, this lead single is that's like the first song they've written together, or the first song that they think is good. And in reality, they're cashing in too soon. All that time they're spending advertising this one song should be spent writing songs that are going to be twice as good in the future. So that's tip number 1 to be cautious of. Tip number 2 is don't rely on friends to supply success for you. Now, what I mean by this is like people asking friends to do pre-saves for Spotify, or coming to gigs, because if you've got friends that go to gigs, that means you're going to get booked more. This is a good idea. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. I'm not saying don't do it, but don't rely on it is the key word. So yes, like, there's songs coming out, get your friends to pre-save it. You might as well. Or get your friends to come to gigs, of course. But you don't want to make them. If you're getting it to the point that your friends are it's sort of almost a favour, or you're like trying to ring people up to come to, oh mate, come down to see us play Friday. Like you know, like, let's catch up. Oh, I've got a gig Friday. You know, all this kind of bollocks. I think it's a bit annoying for your friends, but more importantly, it doesn't really provide you with a sustainable source of success. It's a bit of a cope, I think, because it's not really. If you've got ambition in the band, it's not that you want. It's not that you want your friends to come to the gig. Really, it's that you want to be. You want to be successful, right? You know, you want people to come to the gig anyway. And that's not built off the back of friends coming to the gig for you. That's built off the back of being good in and of itself. Now, obviously, it's a bit chicken and egg. You know, you need friends maybe to sort of start the fire off. But I just see so many people where they're like, oh, we have to get all our friends to pre-save our single so that the algorithm like gets, you know, boosted onto certain playlists or wherever else. And it's like, guys, like, it doesn't matter how much your friends pre-save it, like, it's not good, you know, the song's only as good as it's going to be, you know what I mean? So, yeah, don't worry about that stuff too much, and look for the sustainable, and the thing is, people are doing this kind of stuff because it's easy to get your friends to go to gigs, it's easy to get them to listen to your music, but it's not sustainable in the long term. And it's not what you really want as well. You want people to listen to music because out of the enjoyment of their own enjoyment, right? But the thing is, that's a lot harder because you've got to be actually really, really good to do that. So that's number 2. Don't rely on friends to supply success for pre-saves and gigs. Number 3 is, again, this kind of relates to the first one, but I'll explain how it's different. So, realise that it takes time to develop as an artist. So what I mean by this is, you see a lot of artists that become big very early in life. And this can be discouraging for a lot of people because they see the success that, like, not child stars exactly, but like, you know, young musicians get, and that really disheartens them because they think, oh well, I'm their age, or, you know, I'm a bit older, I should be getting that kind of success by now. And yeah, it's a difficult one because music is very young, you know, young thing. Most musicians are kind of in their 20s, you know, some are in their are 18, you know. But I think what people overestimate how important that is. So yes, some young musicians, a lot of labels only will sign younger artists. It's true. I've heard people who are much more in the music industry than I am say this. But think about it for a second. What sort of artists are they really signing? You know, are they signing people to the kind of contracts that you really want, where you're just a sort of, you know, you can bring out a few albums, go on a few tours, but, you know, in a few years, like, there's not much left for you. You're just like, it's very sort of businessy. A lot of musicians that I talk to don't. That's not what they're in it for, right? They want more of something more than that. You know, they want to have a real purposeful music career. They don't just want to be a short-term success that makes the label a lot of money. And yes, many are successful young. So this is the other thing. Yeah, a lot of music are successful young, and, you know, if you're you know, late 20s, and you think, oh shit, you know, this guy was really, you know, 18 when he was famous. It's like, there is truth to that. I'm not saying there isn't, but lots of the best artists become successful when they're much older. So, for example, Kanye West, I think he was like 26 when he brought out College Dropout. You know, a whole bunch of these in my head. Central C was about similar age. Jay-Z, he was pretty old. Well, I don't know how old, but you know, he kind of lived a life before he came into music. Leonard Cohen came into music a lot later. And a lot of these guys that I'm naming, it's like I would say they had a much nicer career than some of these younger stars. Because they're making more interesting, impactful music. You know what I mean? Like a lot of these, you know, a lot of these people changed music forever. They weren't just some flash in the pan. So, and like, you know, it takes time to figure this stuff out, you know. You know, Central C has a massive catalogue of stuff before he was a rapper, where he was singing and stuff, but it was shit. And it took him a long while to find exactly what he was doing, and now he's probably one of the biggest, most famous UK rappers out there. So that's not to say take your foot off the gas at all, because lots of these people are spending the time before they're famous building up that skill set, so that when they eventually do hit the scene, they're going to be massive, rather than just like, oh, he's okay but he's young, let's sign him. So you choose what you think's better. So yeah, and the other thing is, yeah, you know, people prefer younger artists. I'm not saying that's not true, but in the grand scheme of things, even young people don't really care, you know, how old the people are. It's a factor, but what's more important is the music's good. You know, if you're young and you got horrible music, it doesn't matter how young you are or how good looking you are. If your music shits, it's, you know, you're not gonna have any success. But if you're, let's say, 30 and you've spent all of your 20s playing gig after gig, and you've listened to, you know, they've got a really wide range of music, and you're really skilled at playing the guitar or whatever, it doesn't matter that you're that age, because you've got that skill set. Now, you know, you might not be able to manifest fame in the exact way that you typically imagine, but I don't know. I mean, I think that's you know, people don't really care at the end of the day. Like, I saw Molchat Doma about a year ago, and like the guys look, I don't know. I mean, I guess I kind of assumed they were my age, because you know, lots of bands do make it bigger at my kind of age. And I saw them, and I was like, these guys are like 30. Like, I mean, I'd have to look it up. Maybe they're younger, but they looked about 30. And I was like, you know, maybe even older. I was like, fuck, man, that's so weird. You know, I thought these guys were really young. Actually, they're not. And to be honest, they could have been 40, 50. Would I have cared? You know, like, it's just the music at the end of the day that I'm worried about. So, yeah, I mean, definitely get started as young as possible, but just try and think long term with it, basically. So, yeah, that's my 3 tips. I think there's more to discuss, but I think that's the basic ideas I had in my head. So I hope you guys found it interesting, and yeah, I'll do more videos like this in the future. Maybe one day do like a massive one of just loads of things that I've learned. But yeah, hope you enjoy it.